a really cool, awesome. I had a really cool mirror board set up, and something just went wrong last minute. So we're going to do a little part of the workshop, the part that I could salvage really quickly. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. Give me one sec. All right, awesome. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
awesome. Let me just get this out of the way. Okay, great. So welcome everyone. I'm super excited. Bernd and I both have been working on this for a while. We've been trying to get our heads around a very complicated subject. So welcome to Strategic Sustainability Design. This is just an overview of the process. Okay, so I'm Marnie I. I'm currently at RCA in Imperial doing innovation design engineering. And Bernd, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Mani. Well, I call myself a strategic business designer who thinks a lot about sustainability. And one of my roles is to be a lecturer at a local business school here in Porto, Portugal, where we teach tourism and entrepreneurship. Over to you, Mani.
Thank you. So the agenda today, we're going to go over some of the activities that we had planned. This has changed slightly. We're going to have a discussion around sustainability and what everyone's general knowledge is. We're really interested to find out where the service design community are with sustainability and their challenges. We'll go into a quick activity with life cycle analysis. It's just a really simple tool. It's very similar to a journey map, actually. Some more discussions, and then we're going to go through the actual process, and that's going to be quite we try to keep it as light as possible, but there is a lot of stuff going on. So we've tried to keep it simple at the beginning, and later on it gets a bit more technical. So if that's what you're more interested in, it is on its way. So not a lot of people know this because I don't mention it every 5 minutes to show off, but I'm a DJ, right? And I also give DJ lessons. And sustainability is a bit like this this DJ deck. There's so many parts to it, there's so many elements. It's really easy to get overwhelmed when looking at this stuff. So whenever I'm giving lessons, I always whittle it down to this. Keep it simple and just press play on the beat. Just focus on one button. So although there are some experts in this room today, and there are some novices in this room today, some beginners on their sustainability journey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it very simple. Some of the stuff might not technically be correct if you want to pull it apart, but I'm not really interested in semantics. What we're trying to do is get the idea across and kind of contextualize sustainability as a process for people. So we're going to keep it simple and bear that in mind as we're going through. So the objective is by the end of this, we want to give you a high level understanding of systems thinking and sustainability, and to give you some kind of context for all of the different words you've probably heard in sustainability or around that field and what they mean. The Strategic Sustainability Design Toolkit is a process and a toolkit. It's a set of tools which designers can use to achieve business transformation. So I think it's really important that people know what it is we're talking about up front. Okay, let's go. All right, so let's skip over that. So we've done that. So for the first 10 minutes, I would love to know what your level of sustainability knowledge is. The part of the workshop isn't there right now. So if we can get like a thumbs up, if we can get in the chat, in fact, what your level of sustainability is at from 1 to 5. Just let me know how that's going, someone. So everyone, a low is 1 and high is 5. So if you feel like you've got a decent knowledge around sustainability, 4 or 5 is good. So I'll give it another minute for that. Okay, so the next question is what have been your main challenges in implementing sustainability at your workplace or in your personal life? Do you find that understanding the stuff is really complicated, or do you find that people don't want to listen? Is it really hard to make the business case for this stuff? What have been your experiences and your challenges in implementing sustainability, if that's something you've ever done? If you could just drop that in the chat. We'll give it another minute or two. Hey, so Maria or Elaine, can I get you to go through the chat and read out some of the answers that are there?
Yep, I'll do that because we have lots of answers. So I'll just pick a few. Okay, so Anna says, business case, every has bigger issues to address, and then we have time to change, not knowing where to start, what would be the most important thing to change. And then we have being forced to work with it, no interest on the client side, much of the item. We have convenience, we have it, if it makes sense financially, it will go ahead. Cost, organizational structure, creating business cases, conveying the return on investment beyond publicity. And then I find it quite complicated and hard to make a reasonable business case for it. Then we have the people with the most potential for impact are very busy. How do you help them make better, more sustainable decisions? Government and monitoring, personal life, find close and affordable zero waste markets. We have challenges, authority, knowledge. Much of what makes a difference is the whole system level, lack of information. I'm just going to go through a few more if you don't like it. It takes resources, time, effort, and money, and it does not transform into bankable capitalist value short term. It's a new value stream in a world that lacks patience. And then not knowing the intended action is actually going to bring the desired change, impact. Let me know if you want more. There is so much here. So
yeah, those are some super interesting answers. So from what I could spot, there's a pattern going on. It's around the actual knowledge, the individual's knowledge. The other piece is the business case, and it seems like a lot of people are having a challenge around making the business case or understanding the business case and convincing people it's worth doing it. I think another point about it being a long-term, short-term kind of game is also super relevant and super interesting as well. So awesome answer. Thank you for that. I'm going to go through those properly later on. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Can everyone see that? Someone give me a shout. Okay,
Yep.
and what are you hoping to learn from today's workshop is kind of just a couple of words would be cool. If you just pop them in the chat as well, please. What are you hoping to learn from today's workshop?
I think as we're recording this, I'm not sure if it's going to be seen on the recording. So Mani, do you mind if we read as people write?
Not at all. That would actually be awesome. So the practical possibilities and challenges, how to apply service design to sustainability, so ideas and approaches, a new magical recipe for wicked problems. More seriously, I'm hoping to get alternative perspectives to elevate my views. Here out of interest to gain tools, discovering new perspectives, languages, and insights, tools, case studies, experience approaches that I can have clients, additional ideas, practicality, typical design process, etc. Okay, cool. This is awesome. Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna say these are really interesting points, and yeah, these are really common challenges also. I'm going to warn you up front, there are no magic bullets, right? This isn't a simple design process. Service design, although awesome, isn't going to be as geared towards these kind of challenges as one would hope. So what we're going to do is there's a little bit of a challenge that we're gonna issue you. There's a wider scope to what needs to be done. So let me just share my screen again. Okay, there we go. So the first activity, super simple stuff. Let's say relatively simple stuff. It's a life cycle assessment or life cycle analysis. Essentially, I would compare it to a journey map, but for a product, right? So where does it start? Where does a product start? So a product is, let's say this cup right here is a product, right? This is made of metal, rubber, and plastic. Now that rubber came from somewhere. This metal had to get extracted from the ground. Plastic got extracted from the North Sea in the shape of oil, and then it had to be refined. So when we're looking at the processes involved in life cycles, and this is like a big spine that runs through sustainabilities and LCA. We're not just looking at the journey of the customer, we're looking at the journey of the product before it was even a product. What were the raw materials involved? And this is really good for sustainability assessments. It's really good for marketing purposes. It's really good for tracking progress in terms of ESGs and stuff. We'll get to ESGs later. So what I would like everyone to do is, if you can go to the Miro board, just grab a board in Teams. I think we're going to go into breakout rooms, and you're either going to get bread or milk as a product. We wanted to pick something pretty simple. And what we would like you to do is spend the next, let's call it 10 minutes. I think we're about ahead of schedule. For 10 minutes, if we can break down all of the elements of where milk comes from or where bread comes from, what are the raw materials involved, and what are the raw materials used to create the raw materials. Do farmers use fertilizer for their wheat? What is that made of, etc.? And we're going to spend 10 minutes on that. Have we got any questions? Okay, awesome. So apologies again for the state of the boards. Yeah, it was a technical problem. So it looks as though everyone's on the milk one, right? So Maria, are we going to go into breakout rooms?
Yeah, we have breakout rooms ready. We have 12 breakout rooms actually. So it's just to make sure that everyone's on the right. The rooms are from number 1 until number 12. Just so you know.
Great. So if everyone goes to the bottom panel, clicks on breakout rooms and just picks a room with 2 or 3 other people in it, just join a breakout room. It's 5:28 now, so it's 28 past the hour now, and we'll all meet back. We'll close the breakout rooms in 12 minutes.
And they can choose any sort of workspace in the Miro, correct? Like one team grabs one workspace?
Yeah, just help yourself to a board.
All right. Thank you. Could you, should I share the Myra screen so we can see it on the recording, what's happening?
Yeah, that would be cool. Thank
Because
you.
otherwise it's going to be just us for 10 minutes here doing nothing.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
I don't know, Maria or Eileen, I can also do the sharing, but as you wish.
So, Bernd, should you and I
Yep.
pop into breakout rooms, just on the bottom there, and we can just help people if they need help.
I'm recording it. I'm timing it, so I'm gonna send a message to everyone a minute before. So
Okay, I'll share my screen to have the recording of my. Okay.
Okay.
Sweet.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do I need to zoom in because this is just?
Zoom out.
You want me to zoom out?
I see. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we see things happening.
Okay, so the breakout rooms are named as okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, we have 7 in a room and some less, but it's some people might drop out or something. So I created 12 because some have 4, some have 3, so some have 7, like the first one.
Yeah.
So oh, look
Oh,
who's
it's
here.
Adam's here.
Mhm.
A round of applause to Adam. Long time no see.
Well, technically we still can't see him.
No. Woo!
Very cool. There are things happening in the breakout rooms, Adam, just so you know. And I just moved some people that were like alone in a room. I moved them to another room so they wouldn't be all by themselves.
All by myself.
Yeah, exactly. Aileen, do you want to zoom in and spy on some of the groups?
Sure.
Just a little bit, like
Uh,
what's happening.
Where should we go?
Martin, I
Nothing's
hope.
actually back here.
Ah. Cool. Sourcing, yeah. Nice. So Adam, if you want, you can go into one of the breakout rooms. They're open. I
I'm
think
going to
you
have to drop
should.
out again after a while, so unfortunately I'm
right.
still working.
Oh,
Wanted to say hi.
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 Hi there. Hi, Bernd.
Bernd is all very cool. Really nice. Oh, Shima. Okay, I'm gonna. Shima is also okay.
Martin, just go ahead and speak up if you have a question. We will always see the chat.
Yeah, you should, in the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be an icon with like 4 squares and it should say
I don't see
breakout
it.
rooms.
I don't see that either. I think if you come in
I
late,
have
you don't see
apps, I have whiteboards, and that's it. I mean, yeah, all the others, but none of them is the breakout room.
I don't have it either.
Then Martin, I'll just send you to a breakout room. Is that
Thank you.
okay? Yeah, okay. Let me see. Martin assigned to room 9. There you go. Ah, so if you come later on, you don't see the breakout rooms?
I guess so.
So I'm gonna send Swarina somewhere as well. So see you.
Yeah, sure. And I guess other people are probably doing other things as they. Very cool.
How many folks do we have in total?
I think it
About
was
67, including
No,
us.
No, it
Right.
was
60.
Ah,
Yeah, 68, 67,
Nice.
109 registered. So yeah, that's
Mhm, there's about
good
one
ratio, yeah.
more percent.
It's a nice big number.
We have 12 breakout rooms. So
I'd make you a co-host, but I can't.
Yes, don't worry.
I think Maria has the
Yes.
god powers.
yeah, just a second. I lost my mouse, so I'm doing that right now.
Where did it go?
There we go.
Now you should be able to see the breakout rooms.
What did you change?
You want to change? What?
No, what did
No.
you change so I could see them?
I made you co-host.
Ah, I see.
So we have someone who just joined actually.
I think he was already on the call, but fell out.
Left and
I
came
think
back.
I remember the name.
My system crashed, so it's pulled me out of the room. So that's why.
Ah.
Yeah,
Do you remember in which room you were?
yeah, I think eight,
2?
I think.
8. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll send you to room 8.
Okay.
Susanna stood up and money.
Sorry?
I'm just checking which room he was in. There's quite a few rooms with just 2 people in them.
Yeah, because not everybody joined in.
There are some people who are grayed out. That's the ones
Yeah,
who
they've-
didn't join
They've
basically.
not joined, yeah. Most
Mm.
of the
Nice.
Mhm. Jacopo is here.
Mhm.
Casey.
All right, group 11 is doing pretty well. Everything almost finished. Group 5. Oh, wow. Group 2 is meta. They're putting sticky notes on sticky notes. Because the sticky notes were not good enough, so. Why not? I mean, it looks like framed sticky notes, which
True.
looks pretty good. They're really cool. Yeah, it's a bit overwhelming when you see what needs to happen just for a bottle of milk, isn't it?
They've got like 3 minutes left, so I just broadcasted the message. That was a long breakout room, so it's busy.
Hmm. Nice. I really like this. What is it? The second group. They put what resources are used to feed the kettle, and they put diesel. You need some diesel to feed.
Well, I
the-
guess you got a map. You might have to truck in the hay.
Yeah, probably
Mm.
that's the idea. But it's just funny because the question is like,
Mm.
what resources are used to feed the kettle?
Mhm.
Diesel.
Hey Adam, how's it going?
Good. Hi, Manny.
Long time no see.
Yeah, man. Sorry, I'm late. I've got a busy evening, so
Not a problem. Thank you
you're
for
looking
coming.
sharp.
I
Ah.
don't think I am, dude.
Ah, you are.
I've got a cold. I'm miserable.
Apparently, it's a look that
Oh,
works
that's
for you. Where are you? A different location?
Yeah, so I'm at the campus for the RCA. So I'm
Oh,
on.
cool.
I'm in the studio right now.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Nice to see you, mate.
Money, everyone's coming back slowly. So in the next 40 seconds, I think everyone will be here.
Just say hi.
Okay, awesome. Should we stop sharing the screen so we
Yes,
got
I'll
an
stop.
idea? Awesome.
So we have Bernd Senior and Bernd Junior.
That's right. With no hair in any version, anyway.
Is being recorded.
Mm.
That's a hot mess.
It was a hot mess. I agree. So what I'm gonna say is we can maybe revisit this in about 5 or 10 minutes because yeah, I mean it was a hot mess, and because there were supposed to be more sections to this and there aren't, we can revisit. But how did everyone find that? I guess just drop an emoji or something.
I think it demonstrated the difficulty of doing these workshops online, because I do it all the time and there's always something like that.
Absolutely agree with you. And what about the process itself, like life cycle analysis? How was that for people? Go ahead, Sabine.
Yeah, I felt like I knew nothing about the milk I drink. I actually found it very convenient to be online, because then you can Google stuff. What does a cow eat? Oh my God, you know. My teammate was actually very knowledgeable. I think in 10 minutes, you can just see how complex it is and how systemic it is, and so many pain points.
Yes, absolutely. Has anyone else got any thoughts? What did you find?
There's a few thoughts in the chat window as well.
Okay, let me look through those.
Yeah.
Interesting discussion. So many different factors. Completely. That to be comprehensive, you need to go really far back in the system. 100%. Felt like I needed more information. Don't we all? I didn't have access because I live in Iran. Okay, we lack knowledge and it's hard to improvise. Realize how little knowledge we have of where products come from. I think that's really interesting. Shows complexity, 100%. Happened in the UK. Okay, yep. So I think these are all super interesting points. And okay, yeah, go ahead, Robin.
I think one question we had at the start was like, how far do you go when you're talking about feeding the cows? Do you think about the tractor the farmer used, where that came from, where the petrol, you can keep kind of going on forever with it.
Yeah, so it's a super interesting question. I think the answer to that is, what are you trying to achieve with the LCA itself? If you're really trying to analyze all of the steps and your real scopes and your emissions and your impact that you're having as a product or service or as a business, on the planet. I do feel like you have to go as far back as possible. Having said that, though, if it's just an educational thing, if we're just trying to figure out, like right now, we're only doing this for fun, right? We're trying to figure out how much we know about this stuff, and actually we're trying to, like, we're trying to demonstrate how complicated this whole thing is, how complex it is. So all of those comments in the chat were super on point, I feel. So yeah, I guess what is the function? What are you trying to achieve with the process? And if you are genuinely trying to achieve some deep knowledge for a business, it can't just be a simple life cycle analysis like the one we've just done. It's going to require deep research and like some scientific knowledge and like a real understanding of who the suppliers are, what they do, how they achieve their stuff. But the whole point is, once you've done this a couple of times, you understand how complex the entire process is, and therefore you kind of get an idea of how complex the entire problem is and how big of a mess it is to try and wade through. Did anyone else have any thoughts? Okay, so let me share my screen again. So the discussion is how did you find the activity and what did you learn from it? I think we just answered both of those. Activity 2 in your group, pre-assess the highlights. And okay, you know what, we can come back to this later. Right, so what I wanted to cover, the term complexity we've used, and that's I'm super happy to say that, right? So essentially, a lot of these conversations, especially around business, they get reduced down to carbon emissions. Now, there's a very good reason for that. Businesses tend to like to measure metrics, and carbon emissions is like a really simple one to measure, and it's something that people can roughly understand. But the truth is, the issues around sustainability that the world is facing are like huge. They're multifaceted, they're ever changing, and there are no clear boundaries, right? Things are constantly in flux. There's no one way to solve any one of these problems because there are so many people involved. There are so many elements along the chain. And if you change one thing, then 10 problems are created tomorrow. Now, this process in systems thinking, which is aside from service design, but I think they're cousins, is called complexity, or also known as wicked problems. So complexity essentially is today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. When you change one thing and 15 other things are reliant on that one thing you've changed, then what happens tomorrow where those other problems come into play later on down the line? You can use plastic because you don't want to use metal because it's cheaper, and then 20 years or 30 years down the line, you might discover that plastic actually doesn't degrade for hundreds or thousands of years in nature. So you never know what kind of end result you're going to get from a solution that we design. And this is one of the main challenges with service design and design thinking, is we tend to focus on the immediate solution and the human, the impact within the human context. But when it goes beyond that, it tends to be quite limited in understanding in terms of service design. So activity 3, we'll come back to this. Cool. So current industry challenges with sustainability. Businesses don't understand what the return on investment is going to be, where they're going to make money from this. If they throw a ton of money in, then how are they going to benefit? They don't understand how to implement this stuff. There's very little in the way of like legitimate processes that are actually effective to do this stuff. The reason for that is a lot of these problems are only being recognized properly in the last couple of years, and processes take a long time to figure out. So even though you could have the best intentions in the world as a company or a sector, you might not know how to fix a problem because it's never been done before. It's a complex problem, and therefore there are many elements to it. And again, overwhelming complexity. There's just so many elements to all of these things. You're going to have to change your entire value chain, but potentially every one of your preconceived ideas about how your business runs gets turned on its head when you start looking into this stuff. And it's a real eye opener, and people just don't know where to start. And that's the industry level, but at the business level, sustainability is incoherent. A lot of people said this earlier on in the comments. People just don't understand it. Like, you can Google sustainability and there are like 15 different elements to this stuff. A lot of them contradict each other. There are so many words and letters and symbols and terms that get thrown around. People just don't understand what they mean. So we don't have the right tools for the job. And the classic innovation dilemma is people are just resistant to change. They don't want to change in organizations. So the challenge that me and Bernd were tackling is how might we simplify and organize sustainability into a coherent, accessible design process. We need to simplify things, and we need to keep it like understandable, as understandable as possible. It also needs to be effective in guiding companies towards a holistically sustainable or regenerative outcome. We don't want to change one department. We don't want to change one part of the business. We understand now we've looked at the life cycle analysis, that these are really complicated problems with so many different areas that we are responsible for, indirectly or directly. So how can we incorporate all of those elements and all of that thinking into a design solution? So, like, surely the question's often asked, there must be a process for this already, right? So there are a bunch of processes out there, but they're quite fragmented. We have ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance, which is basically about how can we turn measurement of stuff into numbers, and then how can we report those numbers? There's systems thinking, there's circular, there's sustainable. All of these things are smaller parts of a bigger whole. You can't turn everything circular. Circular quite often is quite theoretical in a particular industry, because all of the practical components you'll need to become circular just aren't there. If I claim to be a circular company, and the product I'm producing doesn't get recycled in Europe, it has to go on a ship to Turkey because there isn't a recycling plant that handles that particular material, then it's not circular at that point, right? So it's nice in theory. All of these ideas, regenerative design, for example, they're all very good in theory, but the practice hasn't borne out yet. And the problem is there haven't been enough repetitions, there haven't been enough reps for these for the niggles to have been worked out yet. So this is where we are. We're right at the beginning of the journey. Everyone right now is kind of at the beginning of where sustainability and innovation meet. And the challenge for us is, how do we move forward? So a lot of these processes require special knowledge. Some of them are too complicated to understand for easy adoption. Like some of them, for example, some of the best ones, you need to go and do a master's for. You need to really understand the science, the business side of things, and the systems thinking side of things. Not everyone has 2 years to spare. And a lot of designers can start making effective, real impactful change very quickly, but they don't want to take that detour. And some of the tools are too simple or not comprehensive enough to actually be effective. So we need these solutions to be effective, accessible, and holistic. We're dealing with business, so we need to be able to speak business language. We need to understand why we're doing stuff, so purpose and strategy are important. The tools we use need to feel familiar to designers, because we want rapid adoption and we want them to be. So I compared a life cycle analysis to a journey map, because we want people to feel like, oh, okay, this is kind of familiar to us. We kind of understand what this is and how it works. Right. So so basically, currently, design can't handle the problem. The tensions between approaches are: management classically recreates what already exists, and businesses are trying to solve innovation challenges with management, and you can't do that. It's not equipped for that. Management just recreates what's already happened before. Service design is awesome for innovation, but service design doesn't, in its current form, doesn't. It's not equipped to handle the complex problems. It's not equipped to handle the multifaceted, multi-element, fragmented areas of this stuff, and it's not designed for complexity. Design thinking is very good at solving individual problems at a really high level. Systems thinking is good at zooming out and looking at the wider scale of things, but it's not so good at solving individual problems. So the solution is probably somewhere in between. And what we've come up with is, what we're proposing is, we need a new profession. We need a new design discipline completely. And we're calling it strategic sustainability design. What it does is wide innovation. It tackles complex issues. It tries to create not solutions, but interventions to complex issues. So just a quick overview. It uses systems thinking and design methodologies with business tools and foresight tools alongside sustainability frameworks to aid in business transformation. So essentially, we have 5 or 6 different disciplines and sets of tools all in one process, and this is what's required. We took the spine from this amazing book. I recommend it to everyone who's a service designer, called Systemic Design, Design Journeys Through Complex Systems by Peter Jones and Crystal Van Eyl, both geniuses. It's a book about systems thinking, which is designed for service designers. So it's co-created. It has canvases that you can download for free. The Systemic Design Toolkit is a free download, and it's really good, and it really introduces people to complex systems ideas, systems thinking ideas, in a really simplistic way. It's really amazing. I feel like service design is going to go in this direction in the next 5 years. I think this is a game changer. So the classic service design process is normally with a double diamond. It's quite simple, but it's really effective. But the systemic design process is a bit more complicated. So a lot of it is about finding out exactly where we are and what challenges we're tackling, and understanding exactly where to leverage where all of the challenges are, because remember, there's multiple problems, and trying to figure out where the best interventions are. In systemic design, we don't talk about solutions necessarily. We talk about places where we can intervene to change the biggest leverage points. Half of these are design thinking based, and half of these are systems thinking based. Okay, so strategic sustainability design, strategic because it's businessy stuff. Sustainability, it's a terrible word. Sustainability doesn't really mean that much. It means so many things. It doesn't mean anything. But it's a term that people are used to, and I'm not really interested in semantic arguments, to be honest. I just want rapid adoption by as many people as possible. So we're going with sustainability, and design is also like a terrible term because it means so many things to so many people. But we're going with design because it's familiar to the people we need to take this process on board. So how does it work? But maybe you want to take over here?
No, keep going if you may. It's good.
Okay, I feel like everyone's getting bored of my voice. Okay,
No.
so how does it work?
They make great points.
Right, so essentially you start with absolutely nothing. You don't understand what's going on. We've called it the light green to dark green spectrum. So we're trying to make this as simple as possible. So the first element of what we do is a discovery sprint. And this basically covers stuff like ESG, education and alignment within a business. What this is the most basic stuff. A lot of people wag their finger at ESG and say it's not good, etc., etc. ESG is really good for alignment within a company, especially for people who don't know anything about sustainability. People within these companies, they want to make a change quite often, but they just don't know where to start. And it's very complex, like we've discussed. So ESG is a great place to start. Measuring your numbers, your outputs, going through the life cycle analysis and really figuring out what suppliers are doing what kind of damage and how to fix that. This would be an intervention. This would be like a set of workshops. You would come in and then maybe for a year or two, you'd let the company sort itself out and try and achieve better. Someone is, sorry, Kai, could you mute yourself, please? The next intervention would be maybe in a year or two after we started the discovery sprint. We'd come back for another set of engagements. We call it a sprint just because it's a set of workshops. So we would go with a sustainable and circular sprint where we really make a change, right? We're going for the business model, we're going for a circular value chain, we go through all of the suppliers and where our products end up, we take responsibility for all of it. And we really involve stakeholders in multiple stakeholders in collaboration. And then the regenerative sprint is like the dream. Regenerative is like the highest form of the sustainability spectrum. And essentially what it means is net positive. We're running a business that actually gives more back to society than it takes away. This would eventually be the hope. So slowly but surely, we will work over the space of a couple of years to get to where we need to get to. We're dealing with the most conservative people on the planet. People who run businesses don't take big chances. So often there's a conversation where we're not doing enough, we should jump straight to regenerative. We think that's not like a reasonable request to ask of people who don't know anything about this stuff. So what we take the slowly but surely approach, and because it is such a sensible approach, this is what's going to get the business people on board. Okay, and across the 3 layers, we work with the C-suite first. So we start with education, alignment, and strategy. We understand from a business perspective, like we're dealing with businesses, we need to talk in business language. It's not necessarily about the moral language in this case, because we're dealing with individuals, and if we're going to be user-centered, we need to meet them on their terms. So we need to make the business case, we need to explain to them in business terms what disruptions are about to come to their market, what laws are about to change in the EU, why they're taking more of a risk not taking this process on than they would be to take this process on. Essentially, that's the language they understand, so we need to hit them with that language. Then we go to middle management, because things really happen in the messy middle. This is where classic service design kicks in. So we work with middle management to figure out processes, create implementation, to create a culture, to create the rituals, the monthly meetup groups, the accountability, the alignment, process innovation, all of this stuff over the 6 months or a year of the first engagement. And then we get down to the level of the employees, and because they're on the front line, they are the first ones to be able to spot opportunities for innovation, to cut down on waste or cut down on carbon output and stuff. So what we really want to do is get everyone in the company to buy into this process and to educate them on that basic level, so they can not only like do wonders for the environment and their company in terms of savings on those things of waste, but also like to feel good about working at their job. I think stakeholder engagement and employee engagement is like a key part of this. The employee satisfaction would go up. So if like we said earlier, if you change one thing, sorry, I'm going to stop for a second. Has anyone got any questions so far?
Yeah, can you go back to that slide of the leadership implementation? Because I think.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so I'm going to show my screen now.
Manny, will you be able to share your presentations?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I've got no problems doing that.
Awesome.
So we said, where do we want to get to? The leadership, this one here?
Yeah, that one. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, we're just screenshotting, right? So I think we're going to be happy to share these slides. Do we have any actual questions though?
Yeah, I also had a question regarding well, so the ripple effect that you see when you implement the smallest change can start from almost anywhere. So my question is, if you start from the top, are you going to be able to do the implementation up to the employees level, or is it sometimes enough to start at the employees level with some kind of interviews or conversations, and then create the ripple effect bottom up, basically?
Yeah, so that is an amazing question. There's two answers to that. So the first answer would be, again, we mentioned complexity earlier. So as we're going through these processes, every time we make a change, changes happen. So there needs to be a constant iterative approach, hence these circles, right? So we're always circling back to where we need to be. We're testing stuff out, we're prototyping stuff, we're rapidly prototyping stuff. This is all the standard innovation stuff. And we're trying to figure out where we should be. And we're trying to figure out our numbers, because again, this is all new. Everyone's pathfinding through this scenario. So there are constant iterations, but the second part of that answer comes a little bit later on. But awesome question. So handling complexity is, it requires adaptability. And because this process is a new process, the iterative process is gonna be required long term over the transition. So hence, there's a lot of iteration going on throughout this whole process. You always course correcting. How you know how to course correct is we're using a tool that we kind of created for this, is sustainability maturity assessment. And essentially that's a constant feedback loop to understand where you are in this process, where you should be, what's going wrong, what's going right, etc. So essentially, what progress have you made? Where should you improve? And is it time to level up? You don't get from less harm to sustainable or circular and then to regenerative without having constantly improved. And like what we want to do is trying to get these companies to really engage in the idea of constant improvement.
And can you say that the maturity assessment that you've developed is sort of standardized, or like, does it apply to all industries? Or because I know that I used to work in a sustainability assessment reporting for real estate, and we had a really thorough model of assessment. And it was made over the course of 10 years with a lot of PhDs in the specific industry of real estate. So it had it had ontology models behind it that were thoroughly documented, and ontologies are connected to domains, so they're not necessarily
Absolutely, you're completely right, Arena. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with the presentation, and hopefully that awesome question should be covered in later slides. Is that cool?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, so we're dealing with complexity. This is essentially what the model looks like. It's very complicated here because there's so many moving parts, but this is an overview of the entire thing, and people's heads are probably hurting right now. I did say it was going to get complicated later on. So what we're going to do is we look at these 3 sprints here, and as a strategic sustainability designer, if we're saying this should be a new profession where you have several sets of skills, you don't just need a discovery sprint, a circular sprint, or a regenerative sprint, right? You probably also need a social impact methodology as well, to like a set of skills around that. Environmental impacts, ESG, circular product design also, to facilitate those kind of workshops with those kind of processes, and a mission sprint to like sit down with companies and be able to define their mission and purpose. So we're going to focus on the discovery sprint, which is the less harm element. We've done the most work on that so far. So again, this is all prototype at this stage, right? So it's about alignment and education. It essentially aligns the company with the business, with the metrics, with the positive impacts within sustainability. What direction are we going in? Why are we going there? How are we going to achieve it? And it's really focused on implementation and the innovation around creating new processes to have effective implementation. You need the high level overview. Like, I think the classic design thinking process is to optimize the parts, optimize the departments, but departments are in conflict with each other, right? They have different incentives and they have different goals, and therefore it's really hard to get one business or one company or one corporation to move in a single direction without a top-down approach or without like a consensus across the board. So like a classic service design approach isn't always as effective. So the breakdown of the sprint is there are essentially 5 steps. Bernd, this is probably really your domain.
Yeah, happy to jump in and also reflect on some of the comments that I saw in the chat. I think in the slide before, the most important word was transparency. We've seen that even us, when we played in the first breakout session, whether we took the perspective of a consumer or us as service designers, we do not have the transparency that we need. So as a company, we must figure that out and have that transparency for ourselves to be able to manage the way forward. Yeah, in this slide, that's the key word, transparency, in the middle of the green bubble. That's what we are talking about. And please go ahead, Mani, to the phase 1. This is the first phase in a non-linear process. Okay, so don't think of it as phase 1, but we need to start somewhere if we start speaking about it. And maybe in the absence of time, I just pick 1 or 2 tools, because basically what we are describing here in bullet points to the right is a short description of the kind of tool that we would want us as service designers to apply in a specific company. And we would typically, of course, we want to understand what's the vision of this company, what are they up to, what is the current business model, but we want to reach that view of transparency further down. So we might want to use tools like an iceberg model to understand, and all the classical business tools that they're already using. But our lens, obviously, is directed toward that sustainability question. And we need to make sense of that. So I think it was Tim who very rightfully asked, before we even go to solutions, do we not have to reach out and understand what's going on and take these perspectives of the various stakeholders? Yes, that's what we need to do. That's what we call the upstream work. We need to discover the context we are in. Yes, we need these specialists to help us in very specific areas, but in principle, as service designers, we are greatly positioned to ask the right questions here. And sometimes it's even a benefit if we're very neutral, so that we can be very objective to the matter. So we map a lot. I mentioned there the word multi-capitals, which might be confusing. It's not about capitalism. It's really understanding deeply the various forms of capital that we're looking into, the various forms of value. So the environment has value, culture, social. There's a lot of items behind it which we need to understand and map out, because we need to know the consequences of what we are going to do. So right now, in this phase, we might just be looking at the today's and yesterday's consequences of these solutions, and we learn what's going on, so that in the next stage, we can then figure out, as we prototype a potential solution, what might the consequences be there, right? So we start envisioning, we might leverage the sustainable development goals and align with that, if that is the language that we appreciate, or maybe as a company, we are working with that tool already. We believe that as we start working with the horizons that we just showed, for example, we might well be in a position where we need to redefine the purpose of the company. If we can do that, that's great, and we direct it towards sustainability. I'm aware we skipped a lot, but that's sort of what we need to do. So we come up with a vision. That's where that new purpose gets detected. Everything becomes around outcome mapping. Remember the multi-capitals concept we just spoke about? We need to map that into a big outcome map to understand these consequences and chase the positive outcome that we are looking for. And that's always going to be the profit, the people, and the planet. Yeah. However you break it down, it should be the balance of these 3. You can give it different words, use different vocabulary, but that's what it comes down to. In our language, we call that a theory of change, where we integrate these various capitals or outcomes or outputs. And then we drive that into a strategy framework, the ones we know best. Maybe playing to win framework is one that is familiar to many here. That's very suitable. We just make it speak sustainability as well, on purpose. And the author of Playing to Win has no problem with that. You can find him on Medium, and he's preaching sustainability all over the place. So that's just fine. When we benchmark our own progress. We do not benchmark with competition. They can do that, it's fine. What we are interested in is benchmarking our own progress. Yeah, how do we want to fit into a specific sustainability goal? Well, here we go. We draw a line in the sand and we measure our own progress against that and the consequences, because the way getting there might be difficult. What do we have next here?
Yeah, so I think we might be okay. So essentially, so if I jump back in, so essentially, like, what now, right? Okay, this process seems like it's one is very complicated, and I don't really get it, and this doesn't feel like design to me. But like, how is it going to be implemented, right? So our strategy, Bernd and I's strategy, is we're going to look at the 6 dirtiest industries in the world. And we're going to target the 2.5% of early adopters and innovators, sorry, the 2.5% of innovators in those industries. So effectively, let's call it 6 industries. There's 2 or 3 companies that we want to work with in each one to create a case study, which we can open source and get the early adopters on board. And then after that, once we've crossed the chasm, there's a classic innovation adoption curve, the rest of things will take care of themselves, right? Because it can seem super hopeless, right? The climate anxiety is a real thing. People can feel like they're not going to make a difference. But essentially what we're saying is, if we can make the case studies in these 6 industries, which are energy, agriculture, fashion, food, retail, and transport, as well as construction, we can make a significant impact potentially, like, really quickly. And because these are completely different industries, right? You need to, like, everyone feels like they need to be an industry expert. And how would we even get in? That's the question. So essentially, the finance industry overlaps all of these industries. And ESG investing right now is like a huge topic. Companies like BlackRock, even though they are the evil empire, right? They're heavily invested in ESG investing. And ESG investing means that anyone in their value chain, anyone they take money from or give money to, should also be ESG compliant. So what we're finding is that a lot of companies, a lot of industries are rushing to become ESG compliant because they have to be, right? This is like a real business problem that people are having. Also, a lot of legislation is changing towards the ESG, especially within the EU. So a lot of companies, so if you're an ESG company, we should probably explain that, means you work with environmental, your social, and your governance. And what you do, you kind of you measure your numbers, but also you're working with your suppliers and the people you supply to try and make things more sustainable or circular in your processes. That's like a very higher overview of it. So what that means is everyone you work with is going to have to eventually become ESG, or you can't work with them anymore. So it's a really cool opportunity. If you know what you're doing and you know how to make the legal case, the business case, etc., to these businesses, you can very easily start putting together a business focused, airtight case for a new sustainability strategy, a new ESG investing strategy, and like a more circular process. So in summary, strategic sustainability design, there's a lot of words there, I'm not going to read them all. So business tools plus systemic design times sustainability tools equals sustainability, sustainable and regenerative business transformation. So essentially, UX design is focused on creating digital platforms and services and products. Service design it has less tools, it has less components to it, but it's way more flexible as a result. It doesn't have an actual output that it has in mind. It's super flexible. That's what I love about service design. Whereas strategic sustainability design is only focused on business transformation towards sustainability and regenerative business models. So it has a very specific purpose, a very specific function. And if you're like uptaking some of these skills and processes, then it's for that one issue. And I feel like that issue, business transformation towards sustainability, is one of the main drivers right now of a lot of the wicked problems we're facing. So if we can fix that one little leverage point, we could potentially like have a really big outsized impact as designers. So, all right, have we got any questions? Probably tons.
Yeah,
Hi, Manny. Oh, okay. I've got a question just about so think about energy as an example of one of the people you're targeting. There are probably some massive consumers of energy as well. Is there a reason why you haven't necessarily targeted the biggest consumers of energy, or is it just because there's so many of them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like there are hundreds of like there are like dozens of industries you can go for. There's hundreds of companies you can go for, right? So kind of if you want to go upstream as possible, if our energy can be as clean as possible, or if we can aim for like energy that's not going to have like the massive negative impacts in whichever form it comes in, that's going to have a knock-on effect to other companies. Us focusing on individual companies or individual industries that use energy means that we're not focused on where the energy is coming from and why the energy is not clean in the first place, I think. So it's more about leverage points. We're trying to figure out the highest impacts, lowest hanging fruit leverage points. And the reason we wouldn't go for like super high, like anyone who wants to do that with this process is more than welcome to do that. Once this process is done, we're going to prototype this a bunch of times with companies. We have them lined up, and then we're going to open source everything, right? Everything's going to be available free to everyone. We want as many people to adopt this process as possible. But by all means, go for it and adapt it to your particular industry. But we have a certain focus, and we have to be laser focused with how we want to achieve what we want to achieve in particular. Lytran has a hand up. Can I get your question?
Yes. So I know that we have been discussing about, in various industry, but if a company offers, like digital product or digital platform, how is it related to sustainability? And, how can we sort of, apply the sustainability principles or, the design framework in that context?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. So I get this question a lot from UX designers, right? A lot of designers within the digital platforms, they're super focused on this stuff. They're very passionate about it. But the truth is the impact of like energy consumption or carbon outputs, etc., in the tech industries are normally with physical product, and also like a lot of people concentrate on lowering the weight of the carbon weight of a page or whatever, right? And these are tiny little micro changes that all make a difference. Everything counts, right? But essentially, if you're going to work in tech, you need to lean on your bosses and your companies in order to make these huge warehouses full of databases that churn out and use tons and tons and tons of energy. You need to work on infrastructure and like the end of life of products and how they're disposed of and where they're mined and stuff. So from a digital perspective, the biggest impact you're going to have is often just in the design of the digital service itself. That's why I would say, like from a service design perspective or from a UX perspective, you have all the requisite skills, right? You have the design thinking knowledge, you have the facilitation skills, etc. It's just a matter of like taking on a few extra skill sets and elevating your design processes to the higher mission, the higher goal, right? Because if you're really passionate about this stuff and you have half the skill sets anyway, then I think it's not so much of a big step to step into understanding some stuff about business, understanding these new processes, getting your head around the systems thinking stuff. Likewise, if you're a systems thinker, like the design thinking skill sets are amazing, very effective also, and so are the business skills. I feel like there's a lot of talk in the digital realm around sustainability, but like the actual impact. Like I'm a trained UX designer, right? But I stepped out of it because I didn't feel like I was going to have an impact on this particular mission. And this is where I found myself. But I feel like this is somewhere that people can travel soon. Maria, how are we doing for time?
So we have 6 minutes left for the official time. So I think there are some questions in the chat. I don't know if you can take a couple maybe before we officially close the session. Then if you guys are happy to stay a bit longer, we can do that. I just need like 3 minutes at the end just to wrap up.
Okay, awesome. So Bernd, do you want to grab a couple of questions and go for it?
Yeah, I see a lot about the skill set, the competencies. So I think we should also mention here that another perspective of looking at this is, so beyond our service design skill set, let's say, this work can and should actually be done in multidisciplinary teams. So there is no reason why, let's say, this designerly approach here, which is already using a variety of lenses to get the work done, right? Why it should not be leveraged by us or a team with the engineers in a specific field, with the accountant in another field, right? To make that project a success. That's completely open, and it does make sense to do it that way. So that as much to the skills, that it's one angle that we are answering with that response.
If I could hop in with that one as well. So from a business perspective, you can learn it, like I did the DMBA course, which is an excellent course if you're interested in business. But essentially, like within about 15 hours, I had like a really strong overview of the business stuff that was involved. It's some strategy tools, it's some analysis tools, etc. But business design is so similar to service design. They just use some management consultancy tools. There's maybe 10 tools that you need to learn. You still use them in co-created facilitation. You can still use them. They overlap so beautifully with service design tools. It really surprised me. The same with futures thinking. A lot of those tools are like speculative design tools. A lot of them are essentially design tools. They also work in co-created groups around facilitation. The skill sets are there. There's like a massive overlap with a lot of this stuff, and they don't understand. Systems thinking is also very similar. Service design, you kind of zoom in, or design thinking, you zoom in, and with systems thinking, you zoom out. There's a lot of difference in language. There's a difference in mindset, but if you're able to understand both and zoom in and zoom out, it's there aren't an insane amount of tools. I know the list was quite big, but it's not impossible, and it's not going to take you months and months. It's just a matter of practicing a couple of sprints, and you'll get the basics down. You learn by doing.
Yes, and over time, we obviously think that we can meld some of these tools into one overarching tool to make it much slimmer. But we take the scientific approach first. We test it. We take the best elements that we can see. We go test it. And then if we have better versions, it will be slimmer. It needs to be efficient though.
So Maria, do you want to jump in? It's the last official 3 minutes. Bernd and I are happy to stay behind and answer questions.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining. I think that was quite deep, lots of questions, lots of, I think we could stay 10 more hours because it's a topic that everyone's obviously here, but it's a big topic in general. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And if you check the chat, Anakira posted a link. So the co-creation school, actually, at the co-creation school, there are 3 monthly events for free on the 5th of each month, on the 10th of each month, and on the 18th of each month. So the 5th, 5 a.m. CET, 10th, 10 a.m. CET, 18th, 18 or 6 p.m. CET, where we can talk about absolutely anything. So feel free to join, register these events for these events, and they're free, by the way. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Anakira. And of course, thank you, Mani and Bernd, for taking some time to create this session for everyone and promoting it. So yeah, that's the official end of the session, but we have yeah. Yeah, some people want to go for dinner and so on. Or yeah, thanks.
Hang around if you can, because I think we're going to answer a lot of the questions that people have. Maria, Elaine, Anna, thank you so much for organizing this. This is awesome. It's been awesome. It's been awesome. Like, because this is maybe the second time we've spoken about this publicly. Because we've been working like so diligently on trying to get it done behind the scenes.
I think we could definitely do a sequel based on the interest and the passion of the people that are here.
I hope so. I look forward to that. So we've got some more questions in the chat, and I'm keen to hammer through as many as possible. If anyone DM'd me or whatever, by the way, you're gonna have to just hit me up on LinkedIn because I wasn't paying attention. All right. So Louise Rose, are you still here? Yeah. All right. So how do you engage? Oh, sorry, Louise. How do you engage the conversation with businesses that might have either some reluctance, either a very close vision of design and designers focused on aesthetics and FX? Right. So yeah, I mean, look, essentially, I don't like the word design. I think that the word design is a terrible word, right? Because it means so many things to so many people that it doesn't mean anything anymore, right? I was going to include a slide and I forgot to, but essentially it's called The Four Realms of Design, right? By a guy called Peter Jones and another dude called G.K. Van Patter. And essentially what it says is design 1.0 is classic communications and visuals design. Design 2.0 is service design and product design. Design 3.0, so the service within the business is 2.0. The business itself and the life cycle and the value chain of the business, all the connections. If you're designing for that, that's systems thinking, and it gets into 3.0. And then 4.0 is systemic design, which is like policy and like the NHS health services, etc. So because there are four completely different realms of understanding around design, I find that that's a really useful way of contextualizing that word. Okay, now I wouldn't mention that you're a designer at all. You don't need to say that. You can say an innovation consultant. You can say whatever you want, right? If people have a conception of the word design, it's not their fault. It's just, it is what it is, right? So what I would do if I were you is say, okay, what I'm working with is strategic. That's why we threw the word strategic in there, right? They love that because it's like a businessy word. So you could say I'm a strategic business transformation consultant or an innovation consultant. You don't have to use that term. That term is just a provocation. It's just something we're using because it feels familiar to people. But again, this is a profession. What we're proposing here is a process, but also a profession, like an entire design discipline. I want everyone, like both of us do, we want everyone to grab that title and go off and do whatever they want with it, right? So they can grab that title and they can use a bunch of other processes that they've found work really well for them. As long as you publish the case studies and everyone can learn from it, that's fine. Just call yourself something else if you're having problems with the word designer. And when you talk business language, when you talk about sustainability, when you talk about ROIs, when you talk about the metrics, when you have the business case and the mega trends and all this kind of stuff that you might not necessarily know about now, but if you look into this long enough, you'll get a cadence for all of this stuff. You can throw it in people's faces and immediately they sit up and they take note. And especially if you can do the preparation work beforehand and put the business case together beforehand to step into the into those meetings or those conversations and be able to quote all of the stuff that the competition are doing, all the stuff that the all of the changes in the industry or the mega trends in the industry. These are all the conversations that people's ears prick up, right? They don't really respect anyone unless you've got an MBA or you're from a business background. But if you can have those conversations using those terms in a language they understand, be user-centric, figure out what they need and work backwards. They're not the enemy. They're not Darth Vader just because they work for a big company. A lot of people within companies are screaming out for change and they would love a process to get these things changed. But a chief sustainability officer or a corporate social responsibility person. These are new roles, right? No one knows how to do these roles. And if you're creating a new role, it requires innovation because you're trying to create a new process in order to achieve your function within that role. No one really knows what their job is. I did so many user interviews for this process, and I was speaking to a young lady, and she was nearly in tears when she was talking about this. And she was like, "Look, I did a master's in sustainability, right? I don't know how to do." She said, she said, "I don't know how to do fucking data analytics." And that's like a major part of the role of ESG. I don't know how to do an ESG report because it's new. No one knows how to do this stuff yet. It's all new. Like, so the fact we're designers, the fact we're innovators, and we're supposed to create these new processes, not just optimize them. We're supposed to create them. That means that if we can take on these extra tools, and everyone here is brave enough to take on the extra processes, essentially within about 6 months, you're in a good place to start having these conversations with people and stepping into those realms. Swati, good seeing you. How you doing? Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, thanks a lot for the presentation, and I could resonate that a lot with my final project that I did last year. So, one problem that was occurring is because when I was mapping the value chain, the value chain is it's fully made of different decisions made by different stakeholders at each point, and at some point these decisions are out of the designer's control or out of department's control, or even the manufacturer, the company that's handling the product, even out of their control. So for us to like bring change, we do have to like drift certain decisions in a different direction, but it might hit it differently in the system, looping it back into a negative effect or something. So how do we approach, we as designers approach uncontrollable and controllable factors? So how do we juggle with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're hired as a service designer and you're even if people, like, generally people don't know what service design is, right? But if you're hired as a service designer within a company, you're hired to not implement sustainability. This isn't your challenge. This isn't what you're here for. You're here to make our processes smoother, right? So if you're hired for that role, it's going to be very hard for people to see you in another role. So, I mean, there is no perfect answer for that. Having said that, though, it might be that you are not in the right place. There's going to be a big demand for this kind of process soon. So you might find that you going the freelance route or you becoming a consultant might actually be a smarter idea for you. This is probably something that people are going to need to go off on their own and do, right? They're going to have a couple of case studies under the belt. They've done a couple of sprints with a few different companies, and they're going to go off. It's going to be in very high demand, just because of the function of it and all the stuff I mentioned about ESG and finance, etc. Like, everyone's going to be compelled to change in the next couple of years. Everyone like I speak to is aware that they need to change. It's not so much people don't want to change, it's quite often they don't have the processes to change. So if you're going to come in as an employee or as a member of the team and say, okay, well, I have this process, they're probably not going to take you as seriously as they would do, like, if I'm being real about this, as they would do as an external consultant, someone coming in outside. So, I mean, that's the reality of the situation. And again, like, I know so many designers that are screaming out for like the tools to do this higher purpose thing, right? And we feel like we're somewhere there. We're close to it. Hopefully, we can iterate and test this and validate this stuff. But we're somewhere there, and if we can just publish these tools and people can go off and take this stuff, and then they can just elevate where they are. Like, I don't think many internal designers are going to be able to pull this one off, if I'm being honest, but I might be completely wrong.
Oh, thanks, Bunny.
There are probably some more questions in the chat. Bernd, have you seen anything that?
No, I was listening carefully.
Have we got any questions? Anyone feel free to jump in.
Yeah,
Hi,
please
hi,
give a shout, please.
Hi, Mariana.
hi, Manny, hi, Bernd. So I have this question. I don't know if you where in this framework or in this model, do you see employee experience? Because lately I work with employee experience design, and lately we have been talking a lot about sustainable productivity. And I find that this is really hard for companies to actually really discuss in depth. So I don't know if, because it makes a lot of sense for me. I don't know if you have thought about this. That's
Yeah, I think the problem with the word sustainability or sustainable is the same problem as the problem with the word design, right? Like business sustainability is different from environmental sustainability, different from social sustainability, right? So everyone can use the buzzword, but we're not necessarily talking about the same thing. I mean, that's what I would interject with that. But Bernd, I'm guessing you've probably got a reasoned, considered argument or answer.
Yes, let's see what I can tell Mariana and the others. In the theoretical framework, we would want to include in each phase a specific lens. So you are asking for the people lens, which we haven't leveraged or spoken about a lot in this workshop. There is a people lens that goes into each pillar of the framework, right? Now, and we need to work that down until the end. If we make it explicit here in the slides, it's way too much information. But that people layer, for example, it hits us in a good way, in a provocative way, across many phases here. So the employee experience is just one. So if you wanted, you could think of the entire framework as your challenge and how do I tackle employee experience, and you run through all the phases, right? And that's possible. And I think that's an interesting thing to do, and it should work. Yeah, it really should work. On the other hand, if we talk about the people layer or the people lens, like I call it, it starts somewhere with vocabulary around people engagement. We haven't put it in the slides explicitly. It should be there. There is people engagement everywhere. And one of the value propositions of this type of project is obviously to have people engaged. And that's one of the reasons. So transparency, I did surface it like from a consumer's point of view, if we do not know the value chain and all the impact, if we go shopping for breakfast goods in the supermarket, right? How are we empowered to take the right decisions? I mean, we can change our behavior of consumption, but unless we know what's really inside that package and how bad it is, we cannot consciously decide whether to buy it or not. So rather not might be the answer. So that people element, and I just gave you one, right? Which is like, well, how do we engage the employees here? That's the other side. We hear a lot that people during COVID have left their jobs because they didn't feel the connection to their company. And that's exactly where this whole story is going, right? So there is a people element in various places. There's another element, which I like to call, the term is psychological safety. So if we want to go innovate, we need to have that space defined as psychologically safe. And we are running that lens across the framework, yeah, wherever it goes. So maybe what we require is a playbook that explains in each phase, what reasonably is contained in these strange words sometimes, and how do we facilitate that? So I think there's some work to be done to include it in good ways, some canvases to be drawn, and a little toolbox that explains in easy and simple terms what could be done in each situation. Not everything, but the best ones, and basically also offer the 2-3 best tools that we know out there, and we can leverage these, right? Because we ourselves, we're not going to preach the term psychological safety, if you want, right? We leave that to Amy Edmondson because she's the expert at Harvard and she's writing the books about it. But we will aim to include that or make these considerations inclusive, because the people element at the end of the day is very relevant. So maybe we're preaching this about planet, yeah, but we're very conscious that it's the balance of planet and people and profit.
Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. That takes me to a question which I can make like comma and answer it. I think it was Eloise or Louise. She asked about how do we measure this ideal state of regeneration, being regenerative, right? Again, the answer is that's a journey. There is no ideal state, but we aim for that. Of course we do. Well, we as a company, we would want to aim for that, to be on that journey. And then we measure against these objectives that we put out there as they relate to sustainability measures. And we want to have that in balance, the profit, the people, the planet. So there need to be many more people indicators, right? So what is happiness? What is the well-being of people? How do we want to measure that? And it must be authentic. Yeah, it must be genuine stuff. And every company may well decide which tool they use. There are also frameworks out there that they may leverage. And we are open to that. Again, we are not the scientists. We cannot go and study it, but we can make suggestions what framework might be the right one for a particular company to follow, to go measure the quality of life of their employees or their customers. It's part of this capitals or value framework, which companies are starting to recognize. They're starting to work with that. So for example, in terms of multidisciplinarity, there's a place for HR people to be involved.
Yeah, so me and Bernd diverge in this respect, right? I'm less people focused than I am like environmentally focused, because I feel like is Sabine still here? Right, so I did a course which was an introduction to systems thinking. I would highly recommend that.
Together, by the way.
Sorry?
Me and Sabine did that course together.
Oh, amazing. So we did it with so the one I did with Sabine was on in Acumen Academy. And I said to her, I said, Sabine, what's the human case? This isn't human centric at all, because as a designer, I'd been trained that was like the highest form of like service, right? And she said to me, Mani, my dear, sometimes humans are the problem. And it was like, it hit me in the head. I was like, wow, whoa. And I realized, oh, actually, the human-centered mindset and the service design mindset and the design thinking type mindset, what does it do? It's a small part of a bigger process. We've seen the life cycle analysis. We've seen how wide this thing goes. And all we choose to focus on is that little part where that person gets their glass of milk in the morning. Whereas the phosphorus that was dug out of the ground that create the fertilizer, the chemicals, the artificial pesticides used in that process, the chemical damage of milk afterwards, the wastage of bread and how bad that goes. Like there's so many elements to just the smallest little things, the smallest human-centered things. And like I'm way less focused on humans now. Like honestly, I'm a lot of the time I'm just like, yeah, fuck humans, man. Like who cares? Like so I'm like for me, I'm more about being an advocate for the environment that doesn't have a voice. However, having said that, obviously we do need to look after people, and these are bigger conversations that need to be had in general. These are all provocations. Like there are no right or wrong answers for any of this stuff. Again, it's all highly complex. Design thinking is like super popular. It's done so well in the last 15 or 20 years because the richest, smartest people in the world, the tech industry, have pushed it, right? It's been useful for them, and they've just invested billions and millions of pounds into pushing the process through UX, through service, etc. It makes sense for them to push this scientific method-based process, which is super reductive, which is very focused on one particular objective, and because it's quite a nice, neat process, people have taken it on and become consultants of it. All right, so Bernd just said something. I'm gonna let him jump in a sec. So the system thinking thing is a bit waffly. It's a bit long. There's some long words in it. It's quite scary. What are you even talking about? The people in system thinking, they're horrible. They're horrible to deal with. They're like the old grey-haired men on LinkedIn, commenting on each other's posts and stuff, right? So it's normally like a slanging match between different schools of thought. So that hasn't done that well because the people pushing that haven't been pushing it properly, and they don't know how to push it properly, and it's so complicated and long that people don't want to indulge in it, right? People like system. I know a lot of service designers have started learning system thinking, and the concepts and the language is overly complicated for no reason, and it becomes very dense. So people are very reluctant to step into that field, but actually, it's necessary, right? As an evolution of designers, we're all design thinkers and we're babies, right? Design thinking's been around for 20 years. It's right at the beginning of its incubation period. If we feel like it's come to its final form, we're sorely mistaken. So the design process is going to expand. I believe personally it's going to go into the systemic design realm. That book really is a game changer. Get yourself a copy. It's amazing. It's the next level. And there's very few people on the planet who understand it or who have gone through that book and understand the process. So therefore you frame yourself as an expert by understanding it and being able to use it. I think design, like all of us collectively as designers, we need to stop being complacent with what we have. We need to stop complaining that we don't have a seat at the table. We need to stop complaining that how do we have a meaningful impact within the company? That's not the conversation we should be having. We should be having something way wider than that. We have skill sets. We understand innovation. We're the ones who push the new. We're the ones who create the new. We're the ones who facilitate people to step into the new realms of possibility in the future. So why are we not having those conversations? It seems like we're having very small-minded conversations about getting a seat at the table in the boardroom and stuff. Like, if you get a seat at the table in the boardroom, what would you say? That's the question to ask yourself. Would you have anything meaningful to say? And right now, I'm not sure a lot of people would. So I feel like the next level isn't worrying about, like, how would I get this to a company? The companies they're screaming out for this. If you know how to approach them, it's about, well, how do I get my skill sets up, and how do I understand how to get these processes out there, and how do I get to affect the real meaningful change and pursue a mission that's worthy of pursuing, as opposed to just worrying about the smaller issues of making someone's day better or adding an element of delight or whatever to an interaction, which is where we are now. And I'm not poo-pooing that, right? I'm a designer also, and these are things I consider all the time. But again, this is just the whole thing. The whole event today was about, it's a provocation. Like, we need to elevate the consciousness of what we're doing and uplift the process. Sorry, I went on a ramble. Does anyone else have any questions?
So if there aren't any questions, I know you guys stayed over time, almost half an hour, so we don't want to take more of your time. So if no one's got any question, I mean, thank you so much. Everyone stayed. So that was a hit. Amazing topic. Everyone's interested in that. So yeah, let's see if there are any more questions. Otherwise, everyone can have dinner if you guys are hungry. And Mani and Bernd, we don't want to, I think we can stay 10 more hours, so we don't want to. What's your next steps? Maybe that's a question for you guys. Are you hosting something anytime soon? Where can everyone find you beyond LinkedIn if you guys are doing something?
Yeah, so Bernd and I have never met each other in person, right? So he lives in Portugal, I live in London. We need to make that happen soon, but so I'm not sure about meetups. Essentially, this is what I'm going to do. I'm at the RCA now, who do designing stuff, and I'm on a course that's at Imperial and the RCA, because Imperial have a business school and RCA have a credible design school. So essentially, I'm only here. I only started a couple of months ago just to get the credibility, because unfortunately, with these grey suit types, you need to have the university behind you, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to run a bunch of sprints as case studies. Like we're getting offers left, right, and center. People are really hungry for this stuff. So we're going to work with maybe 3 or 4 companies, get some validated case studies out there, make sure this stuff works, and then we're going to start pushing it out. It's supposed to be as agnostic and flexible and modular as possible. So it's down to the individual designer to pick these bits up and decide what they're going to use, what they're not going to use, what's relevant to a particular company or an industry. So we try to keep it as flexible as possible. I didn't mention that earlier. I should have done. And yeah, so basically we're going to test this stuff out ourselves. Over the next few months, I guess we're going to start publishing stuff and pushing bits and bobs out. But actually, we wanted to engage people like yourselves who are like at the cutting edge of design and facilitation, like the more experimentally minded people, because I'd love feedback, right? I love to get our stuff ripped apart because it just makes us way better. So if anyone has any feedback, hit me up on LinkedIn, or Bernd up on LinkedIn, both of us preferably. And yeah, I guess maybe in 6 months' time we can come back with case studies of companies that we've actually worked with.
Cool. Thank you for that. So everyone on LinkedIn, maybe you guys put your LinkedIn profiles here, or they're also, if you guys registered on LinkedIn, you can find Bernd and Mani there basically on the LinkedIn event.
On the event as speakers.
Yeah.
Just go back to the original event and you find us there.
Yep. Cool. I'm gonna post the link as well of the event. Here it is.
Thank you so much, everybody that did this. It was really, really valuable. I just wanted to say that with my voice, not just with the text.
Well, thanks for joining, Casey. Yeah, and see you soon again.
Thank you,
The
Casey.
backstage.
So I've dropped my LinkedIn in the chat. Casey, I know you messaged me because I saw the red thing, but I didn't get a chance to read any messages. So feel free to just give me a shout on LinkedIn, everyone. Thank you so much for turning up. There was a lot of familiar faces. So yeah, it's been awesome. And yeah, I really, really, really appreciate, like, you've given us 2 hours of your time. You didn't have to do that. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Any feedback you have, we'd love to hear about it. And apologies for like such a terrible workshop type scenario, but I mean, it is what it is. Stuff happens.
No, it was cool. You followed the flow, you know, and your guts and everything, and I think everyone can vouch for this because lots of people stayed. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Bernd and Mani. And
Thank
yeah,
you,
maybe
everybody.
see you guys at the backstage event as well.